But ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker, Carla Harris. Yeah, whatever you...
Well, I think it's afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is sincerely a privilege and an honor to be here, and I thank Ron and John for the opportunity to come and spend a few minutes with you to talk about a very important topic, much of which you've already talked about this morning, and looking at the agenda, you will be discussing even further tomorrow. And I don't want to spend a few minutes actually talking about what I think powerful, impactful, influential leadership looks like, and more importantly, what does it take in order for diversity and inclusion strategies to really work? My opinion of what that looks like. And the first part of the talk is because each of us in this room has a responsibility to be a powerful, impactful, influential leader. And if we are not, we will not be able to make our respective institutions consistent around diversity and inclusion, which is a requirement if we are going to be competitive on the global front as American companies. And the last part I want to talk about what it takes to be successful, because over and over and over, as I have the privilege of speaking at companies all over this country, I always get the question, how do we make sure that it works? How do we retain our best people? And in my mind, it's really not that difficult. So it is my intention, hopefully, to give you the formula that when you go back to your respective institutions, you have a tool that you can use in order to make sure that it's successful in your respective environments. The first, powerful, impactful, influential leadership. In my mind, it is around the letters in the word leader, L-E-A-D-E-R. The L stands for leverage. Powerful, impactful, influential leaders understand that there is no monopoly on intelligence. You will not always have the best idea. You will not always have the right idea. But somebody in your environment has the intellect, the experience, or the relationships in order to successfully prosecute anything that the team might have in front of them. And powerful leaders understand that it's about creating an environment where the people on your team want to contribute their best ideas because they know that they will get the public attribution, or they know that there will be no retribution for making a mistake. Because if people think there's going to be a problem in making a mistake, they will never give you their most innovative ideas. And as a leader, it is important that you get the best ideas, because you can't compete internally or externally if your team is not funneling the best ideas into you. So it's about creating the leverage. You can't expect that you will do it all on your own, because at the end of the day, you are one woman, you are one man. So if all roads lead back to you, then by definition, your success will be capped. So it's important to leverage other people's intellect, other people's experience, and other people's relationship on your team. Now, at the heart of leverage is, frankly, inclusiveness. I get asked the question all the time, what does it mean to be an inclusive leader? Well, if you are an inclusive leader and you are leveraging other people's ideas and their experiences and their relationships, you will solicit their voices. At the heart of being an inclusive leader, you must solicit people's voices. If you have people on your team around the table, while they may be diverse, if you never ask what they are thinking, how they might contribute, how they might pressure test even your idea, then they won't speak. We are all creatures of habits as humans. And if we think that we smell that somebody doesn't really want to hear what we have to say, we just won't talk. Or if we think there's going to be a problem because somebody spoke truth to power or they dared to question, they're not going there again. So you must solicit people's voices over and over again so that they feel like they are valued and they feel like they are included. It is not enough to invite them into the room. You must invite the voice if you want them to feel included. The first E stands for efficiency. If you are a powerful, impactful, influential leader, you must be clear about what success looks like. If your team is not clear about what success looks like, you create a lack of productivity on your team. You're not happy because you know you can get more out of your team, but you don't understand why you're not getting it. They're not happy because they know you're not happy and they don't know what it takes to get you to happy. So it's important that you define clearly what success looks like. When you define what success looks like, then you unlock that outsized potential in your team. Because as humans, I believe that we are all programmed to do very well. And if we know what we're playing for, then we're motivated to outperform that which is the standard. But if you never define what success looks like, you will not get that outsized productivity. And that outsized productivity contributes to who you are in the leadership seat. It will contribute to your runway in the leadership seat. The A stands for authenticity, and many of you have heard me talk about authenticity before, and I feel strongly that it is at the heart of powerful, impactful, influential leadership. Why? Because your authenticity is your distinct competitive advantage. Nobody can be you the way that you can be you. So you must remember that it is imperative if you are in the leadership seat, and I understand that this is all a room of leaders, that it is imperative that you bring your authentic self to the table. Why? When you bring your authentic self to the table, you will motivate and inspire those who are working with you to bring their authentic selves to the table. And anytime any of us is in an environment where we can be who we really are, we will always outperform. And again, that will accrue to your leadership status in that seat. The D stands for decisiveness and diversity. I don't need to tell this room about the importance of diversity, and your agenda obviously talks about that, and you will be talking about that in different conversations over the next 2 days. But I want to reiterate what I've said publicly before as the business case for diversity, because I cannot believe that 32 years into this conversation about diversity, and now diversity and inclusion, we are still asking the question, what is the business case for diversity? So here it is. We are all competing in one way or another around innovation. I cannot think of one industry where innovation is not the dominant competitive parameter. And if we are competing around innovation to get that one idea that will allow us to obtain and retain a leadership position in our industry, then you must have a lot of different ideas in the room, because innovation is born from ideas. If you have a lot of ideas in the room, you must have a lot of different perspectives in the room, because ideas are born from perspectives. If you have a lot of perspectives in the room, you must have a lot of experiences in the room, because perspectives are born from experiences. And if you have a lot of experiences in the room, you must start with a lot of different people in the room, because experiences are born from people. So in order to get to that one innovative idea that will allow us to compete in a global environment, we must start with a lot of different people in the room. That is the business case for diversity. But if you are in the position of leadership, you must consistently push the edge of the envelope around that to make sure that you demand that there are diverse voices around the table. It is so easy, and I respect so much Congressman Meeks, as he talked about, he had to be intentional about making sure that his team was diverse, because frankly, it happens to all of us. You find yourself in a leadership position, and then all of a sudden you look up one day and nobody on your team even looks like you. Happens all the time. So that intentionality has to happen with each of us, no matter who you are, if you are a powerful, impactful, influential leader, which leads me to the decisiveness. I had the great fortune of hearing Meg Whitman speak when she was CEO of eBay, and she said something that I will never forget, and that is the price of inaction is greater than the cost of making a mistake. And so often, we don't move forward because we are afraid of making a mistake. But even in an environment that is largely unknown. So therefore, you cannot see what's in front of you because you've never been there before. You must not fear making a mistake such that you never make a decision. Because if you are known as an indecisive leader, then your team will not follow you. They'll say, oh, no, 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 don't do that work. No, don't bother with that research. He's going to have to talk to 20 more people. Don't do that. So it's important that even in the face of making a mistake, that you are decisive. Take a lesson from the technology industry. They learned to fail fast. It doesn't matter if you fail. As long as you take the lesson and let it inform the next try, you have advanced the ball. So it's important that people know you as decisive if you want to be seen as a powerful, impactful, influential leader. And oh, by the way, the leaders that I've had the privilege to see through the hundreds of companies that I've taken public over the course of my career, when it was clear that they did not have all the details, they did not have the data, and they just didn't know, they made a decision anyway. And it was almost irrelevant whether or not that decision was the wrong decision, because they pivoted quickly from the experience and used the value of the experience to fuel the next opportunity. So it's important that no matter what, even in the obscurity, you make the decision. And here's the other secret. When you're doing something that has never been done before, which is often the case with diversity and inclusion, it is your responsibility as a powerful, impactful, influential leader to define success. Because it has never been done before, by definition, you are the expert. So it is important that you create the report card by which those who will be evaluating you will evaluate you. Create the report card that looks like success. And when it's not working, it's imperative that you call it first. You call it first and you redirect. Because if it's not working, they don't know what to do to make it work. You call it and say, it's not working, and here's what we need to do now, because here's what the environment is demanding. Next, and move on. The second E is around engagement. If you are a powerful, impactful, influential leader, you must engage with your people. It used to be the case that as a leader, you could be a my way or the highway type leader. That does not work anymore, especially in this new environment where we are trying to attract and retain younger Xers and the millennial generation. They are used to a high degree of engagement. So if you're going to be a powerful, impactful, influential leader in this environment, you must engage. And the more you engage, the more you understand what are the levers that you can use to create outsized productivity by the person. We are all living in a customized environment. Everybody wants it exactly their way. Every company that is consumer-facing is trying to figure out the way John wants it, and Ron wants it, and Susan wants it, and Mary wants it. Everything is customized. Think about it. Every time you go online, it says, hi, Mary, welcome back. And as a leader, if you're going to be powerful and impactful in this environment, it must be to the person. You must engage with your people. And when you engage, you understand then how to create the retention that's going to be important in all of our companies. So often people are making the mistake of saying, oh, the millennials, they just want to change jobs. They just want to change jobs. What are they going to do? They don't know the word loyalty. Well, here's the secret. I spent a lot of time with millennials. They are loyal. When they know that you are investing in them, which takes engagement, because how do I know unless you tell me, then they are likely to stay. In my second book, Strategize to Win, I said to them that they will have 4 to 5 different careers, not jobs, and that every 5 years they ought to reassess. And the question they should ask themselves is this company giving me a compelling value proposition relative to what I could get in the marketplace? Those of us who are boomers, we didn't think that way because the Holy Grail was staying with one company for 20 years, for 25 years, for 30 years. But in this environment that will be highly diverse, it's going to be around what's the best opportunity. And they're going to find the best opportunity where they feel engaged, because the number one word in this generation is community. As somebody said to me this morning, they are tribal. And if there's nothing else, people of color understand tribal. Right? So as we think about how to change our environments, we should be thinking about how do we create community? How do we create that feeling so that we have a higher opportunity to engage? And then finally, the R is about risk. As a powerful, impactful, influential leader, you must be comfortable taking risks. As I like to say, during the financial services crisis, everywhere I went, people kept saying, oh, don't take any risks. Don't take any risks. You know, we're having another reduction in force. We're having another restructuring. You know, just keep your head down. Don't rock the boat. And as I like to say, keeping your head down will not keep you from getting shot. So you might as well keep your head up so you can see the bullet coming. No. I say that with jest, because what I'm really trying to say is, especially during tough economic environments, and this is so important for diversity and inclusion, because my opinion is the reason we aren't farther along in this effort is that, especially in financial services, this has been a bull market phenomenon. When things are going well, people invest in diversity. They hire lots of people in diversity. They put great programs in place. But the minute we hit a bear market environment, it doesn't go away, but the intensity goes way down from 10 to 2 or 1. And once you start having reductions in forces, you interrupt your pipeline. So the next time we find ourselves in a bull market environment, we all have to invest all over again, which is why we keep going around and round and we haven't made more progress. Well, it's important that even in tough economic environments, it is not the time to keep your head down, because keeping your head down submerges your voice, and your voice is at the heart of your power. When you submerge your voice, you become irrelevant. And when you become irrelevant, you put a big target on the front and a big target on the back. It's especially during those times where you can markedly accelerate your success, especially in diversity and inclusion. Because so often people say, well, we can't legislate this. We can't put that person in there. You know, we might lose Joe. Well, it's a recessionary environment. Where's Joe going? Where's Joe going? You're not going to interrupt. You're not going to upset the apple cart. It's especially when it's really tight. That's when you can push and advance the agenda. And you must do it in those environments so that you maintain the consistency, so that we can finally advance the conversation. We can finally advance the results. Now that leads me finally to what I think it takes in order to be successful with respect to diversity and inclusion in any industry: academia, financial services, healthcare, energy. 3 things: intentionality, accountability, and consistency. You must be intentional about it. And that means being intentional, as I said earlier, about making sure that you have the right people at the table, even if you have to interrupt your pipeline. So often, companies have an appetite to actually grow from within. But if you are dependent upon growing from within, it will take you a generation. It will take you a generation. And with the rate of technological change, nobody can afford to wait for a generation. So you must be intentional, even if it means interrupting your pipeline. You also must be innovative. You have to do the thing that has not been done before. Every now and then, there's a program that you've had in your organization that maybe it was a little too early. You had the right idea, but at the wrong time. Every now and then, that's the case. But in order for us to really be successful with respect to diversity and inclusion, you have to innovate. You have to think of yourself as a disruptor. What can we do that hasn't been done before? What can we do to make ourselves stand out in the industry? Why would a really smart, talented millennial want to come to work here? A couple of things that we did at Morgan Stanley that I thought was disruptive is we started an in-house accelerator. for entrepreneurs of color. Had not been done on the street. There's been small business lending here and there. There's been some private equity investing. But here we thought, let's bring them in-house, because where else can they get the kind of information that they will need in order to be successful public companies? And oh, by the way, let's start a lot earlier than most banks do. Most banks really don't want to spend a lot of time with emerging companies until they're just about to go public. But here we said, you know, let's start when they're Series A, that first institutional financing. Hadn't been done before. Obviously took some selling internally, externally, but we got it done. And the thing that I'm most proud about was that no matter who you talk to in this space, when you look at successful accelerators or you look at successful incubators, and you don't see a lot of women or people of color in their pipeline or in their classes, and you say, why? Why don't you have more women? Why don't you have more people of color in your classes? Hard, it's very difficult. Can't find any, right? Now I see a whole bunch of amens in the room. Everybody's heard can't find any, right? Well, my colleague Alice Vilma, who's sitting against the wall there, we went out a year ago on the Whisper Network. Y'all know what the Whisper Network is, right? Hey, we about to just, right? So we went out on the Whisper Network for 2 weeks, and we got 100 submissions for 5 spots. And the thing that I'm most proud of, we have forever squashed the comment, can't find any. Can't find any. And these were terrific technology-enabled companies with Asian, Hispanic, and African-American entrepreneurs and women also within those demographics. This year, we said, we'll double it. And we had 3 times the companies in the same amount of time. So they're out there. They're out there. But we have to be willing to step beyond that which we see. That's the definition of disruption. And oh, by the way, leaders do not compete, ladies and gentlemen. Leaders disrupt. Anybody say Amazon? Leaders disrupt. That's what they do. But you must be intentional about it. We started a capital access fund. We started a conference, you know, with Ron and Sid and others that was just a business conference for people of color. Because as a woman of color, every time I am invited to a leadership conference, I could count the number of people of color in the room. As a woman, every time I was invited to a women's leadership conference, I could count the number of women of color in the room. So I said, well, where do the men and women of color who are in the C-suite or running multi-billion-dollar divisions within global companies, where do they meet to talk about cybersecurity and counterterrorism and the global capital markets and next generation of X? Where does that happen? It didn't exist in the marketplace. So we created it. We innovated. And now what you're doing here, outstanding. Outstanding, because this is where we need to ideate around how to get it done within the corporate environments. The A stands for accountability. I've already alluded to it. You cannot be a one and done. You can't say we have this program and not ask the question. So when John, and I'm just picking on you, John, when John comes for his evaluation and you say, John, one of our corporate initiatives was to make sure that we had succession planning and that everybody in your succession plan, that there was a diverse list of people. I don't see anybody here. And he says, well, you know, we just had a blowout year. The revenues were 40% up. I really didn't have time to work on that because we were working on the strategic initiatives around revenue. Yeah, but this was a strategic initiative too. And you did a great job on the revenue, John. You know, and we're going to pay you X. But had you done this, it would have been X plus Y. Right? You didn't have to set a target. Just said it was important. And when you have that conversation, it takes one evaluative cycle for change. One evaluative cycle. Because guess what? John's going to be mad. He's going to be really angry. But guess what? He's going to be really angry. He's going to go tell Steve. And Steve's going to say, oh, let me change that list. Let me make sure that's right when I go in there. We are reactive creatures. As humans, we are reactive creatures. But you have to ask the question. You have to hold people accountable. You can't say this initiative was more important than that initiative if you understand that this is what it's going to take for you to compete. You must ask the question. None of these organizations are mature enough for it to just happen as a part of the culture. It doesn't just happen. You need some type of policeman or some type of thing there that's going to hold everybody accountable. And then lastly, I already talked about the C. The C is consistency. It cannot be something that you focus on in good times. You have to double down on it in bear market environments. You have to be consistent if you're going to make sure that you're successful. The stops and starts won't get it done. Won't get it done. And as I close, I tell you that success does not just happen. You must be intentional. You must be intentional about your performance as a leader, speaking truth to power, demanding that it gets done, holding everybody accountable. You must be consistent about your communications, and you must be consistent about your relationships. And that's the beauty of what's happening here, the relationships that can be created, the interdependency that is definitely on display in this room. You cannot forget that when we leave this. We are all interdependent if we're going to be successful, especially as we go forward. And the only way that you can underscore that interdependency is to activate it, to use each other. It's not enough for it to just exist. You got to do something with it. It's like a stock. Yeah, it's valuable on paper, but it's not valuable really until you sell it and you get some currency for it, right? So it's important that you activate and use it. Having it exist doesn't really mean much. And with that, I open it up to Q&A. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. All righty, any questions? No questions? Okay. Okay, time for one question. Oh, wait a minute, I'm holding up between you and lunch. That's the problem. Okay, all right, okay. Okay.
It's a pleasure to hear you again, darling. Everywhere you go, I try to be there.
Thank you, thank you.
I had a conversation earlier with Ron Parker about the meeting before the meeting, where the decisions really get done. And that's a problem I'm sure everybody in this room faces. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it's no question, and thank you again, Ron. And I just wanted to point out, Ron did come back in the room. He did not leave. So the meeting before the meeting is really, really important, and it's more important that you get yourself in the meeting before the meeting. And what I started to do to make sure that I had a chance to participate was create my own meetings before the meetings, right? I do believe in management by walking around. So if I knew that I had a big presentation coming up, I would make sure that I started going to the offices of those who were going to be in the meeting to have the conversation so that I could figure out where people were going to be when we got in that meeting, or hold the person accountable, just sort of give them that look. Like, now we're talking about this now. We're talking about A. Don't go E on me when we get in the room, right? So really trying to hold people accountable around that. But I had to instigate to actually go to them to start having the meeting before the meeting, because if you don't, you run the risk of getting derailed when you go into that room, and especially when you're talking about this kind of topic. You want to make sure that you've gotten people to sign off or at least give you some indication of what they might throw out there. And I have had a few bombs, right, where, someone has said or kind of committed that they were going to talk about A, and then they went E, but I learned how to handle that too. I would then say, no, I understand your new perspective, but when we were talking about this beforehand, you said, and that was the last time that happened.
Thank you very much for joining us. I have a quick question for you around some of the impediments to leadership and the fact that some people view this as a zero-sum game. And so how do you get past that to build the type of collaboration and the type of leadership that you're talking about?
Yes, and if it's your leadership that views this as a zero-sum game, then you really have to take the time to educate them. And I do believe in that one-on-one interaction. Once you realize what their points of resistance are, then you just keep going back and forth with those points one by one until you can get them to soften on those points. Now, if the points of resistance are within the organization, then I think you have to recruit a team of people that can help you do that. So that this one might be working on Nancy, this one is working on Tom, this one is working on someone else, so that you can try to get people to convert and realize that they should not have what I like to call a slice mentality. And those people who are focused on the zero-sum game have what I call a slice mentality. They're not focused on the pie. They're focused on just their slice. And what I started doing was telling people, listen, I understand that the slice is important, but let's talk about the pie. If I can get the pie bigger, then by definition, your slice becomes more valuable. So you can keep your slice if you want, but work with me on the pie. Let's get the pie bigger. And I started being very intentional about using the we pronoun and the us pronoun in those environments where there was a zero-sum game mentality. Because when you start giving people a pat on the back or saying, we did this, or you helped me with that, then again, you start to make some inroads into changing the way they think. But when it's I, then you create this I versus you kind of competition, if you will, and it does not change the mentality. But the we and the us and the pat on the back and the attaboy, especially with the folks who are resistant, you start to work on them that way.
I have to be the bad guy.
That's
and
all right.
Stop the question.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been fabulous. Thank you very much.
Can we give another round of applause for Carla Harris? Thank you so much.